Before the show starts, this is a reminder to all our listeners that the podcast is an open discussion forum and not meant to be used as a source of direct professional help. We at Panic Stations UK would always urge anybody listening to go seek advice from their GP, that is their doctor, a counsellor or a therapist. The podcast is, however, a place for people to share experiences and realise that you are not alone. Due to the subject matter discussed in the shows, some episodes may have explicit language in. I warn listeners, as this is meant to be a realistic look at mental health. As such, you may find that some of the guests use some pretty colourful language. I ask all listeners just to freely accept this and to honour the guests that are on the show. It's their journey and it's their freedom of speech, and we at Panic Stations UK would never do anything to discourage that. Many thanks and enjoy the show. Welcome to another episode of Panic Stations UK. It's been a bit of a bizarre week. There's been plenty of podcasts being made, and I literally have hours worth of stuff ready to display over the next couple of weeks. But there's been so much stuff going on, and I've got little side projects on the go, and it's all been very, very busy. So you're gonna have to bear with us for the next couple of weeks. Now, this episode, if I've got this right, you're going to have to forgive me. If I've got this right, this episode will be the start of our guest Jon Cross talking about his struggles with depression. He's going to be on the show in a little while, and we're going to have part one of that. Now, at the time of recording, several things have happened. At the time of recording, unfortunately, Robin Williams has passed away. He's decided to take his own life. From the reports of from the radios, I released a sort of emergency podcast, as it were, just to highlight the need for better understanding of mental health and better awareness, and also as well to basically highlight how powerful a situation that suicide can be. And frighteningly enough, as morbidly ironic as this could be, I was set to do a podcast regarding bipolar and depression anyway, and then unfortunately this tragic set of circumstances has happened. Then I've been in contact with a filmmaker regarding his efforts spreading awareness on PTSD sufferers, should I say. Sorry, I'll put my teeth back in. And he's going to hopefully be on next week. So the way it's going, this week will be part one of the Jon Cross interview. Next week, if we're really lucky, we'll be able to have the interview with our friends making the PTSD sufferers films, which would be absolutely fantastic. And obviously more about that next week, 'cause that's more next week's show, hopefully. If not, if it doesn't go to plan, then obviously part two of the Jon Cross interview will be out next week, and then the following week will be about PTSD sufferers. And then after that, we have a two-part special with Danny, who's returning to Panic Stations UK to talk about his experiences with bipolar and the multiple medications he's had to utilise over his years dealing with the illness. So we've got some great shows heading up. It might be a bit shambolic, so you're going to have to forgive the show. We're getting lots of things in the pipeline. The website's taken off quite nicely, and we're getting more people onto the Facebook site. So if you want to check those out, please feel more than welcome to check out www.panicstationsuk.com, or go into Facebook and type in Panic Stations UK and like the fan page. Now, before we go and start the interview off with Jon, there's one order of business I'd like to take care of. In one of the previous podcasts, I discussed some of my own personal issues regarding sleeplessness and anxiety, and more importantly, stress from personal situations, where I've found myself in a situation where things have happened in my private life and it's caused certain flare-ups of events, should I say. Now, Unfortunately, one of the people involved with that personal situation took offence and felt quite strongly, understandably from their point of view, to be honest with you, that obviously they thought, oh, hang on a second, well, this isn't, whoa, hang on, this isn't fair, and that's understandable. This is a learning curve for me. Obviously, I can only draw from my own personal experiences. Even though I didn't name names, and even though I didn't go into lots and lots of details, I've still got to be very, very wary of when I spread my personal stories to people. Obviously, I never talk about my professional life, because that's work related, and that wouldn't be professional of me. But I'll happily talk about my own private experiences, or experiences I've had in a workplace that long ago that aren't in my current job. So, with that in mind, I wanted to set the record straight and send an apology out to the person who took offence. Obviously, we've had a long sit down and talk about it. I've gone back and edited the podcast to make sure that obviously anything that might have been deemed offensive was taken out. Wasn't a great deal, in fairness. However, if it's enough to insult one person, then it's too much, in my opinion. There's one thing about expressing your own personal opinions, and that's fine. And I won't stop guests from sharing their own personal experiences. But of course, I think I have a personal responsibility to the friends and family that know me, just maybe think a little bit before I engage my mouth. So this is my official apology to those out there who may have taken offence to any of that. That wasn't my goal in the slightest. However, obviously, I will continue in the future to discuss my own personal struggles, but however, I'll try and engage my brain a little bit and just see, even when I'm trying to mask what I'm saying by not naming names and things, maybe it might be an idea to perhaps try and, I don't know, work a way around it, and I'll work to endeavour to be a bit better with that one. Anyway, as I say, all water under the bridge, all been sorted, but I wanted to set the record straight to the listeners out there, because I think I owed them an apology, and I think that's the main thing. So, right, on with the show. We're about to listen to some of the interview I did with Jon Cross. Now, for those of you who are unaware of who Jon Cross is, he is a very close friend of mine. He's a gentleman, a really, really funny, talented, creative guy. He's also a guy who runs several. He's got like a podcast empire. It's quite amazing. He runs several different podcasts, and he guests on several podcasts, and it's all film related, all some fantastic things. And hopefully, if I can spend some time doing it, I would like to do a future segment involving psychoanalysis in cinema, and like the emotional responses of film, perhaps, and some of the Panic Stations specials. Maybe do a little side shoot, but that's that's in its experimental stages, and I spoke to Jon about that anyway. So this is Jon Cross and myself talking about his own personal experiences. Before we get into that, I'm going to play some of his music. He does a band project called Misilanious Plumbing Fixtures, and they're fantastic. You can get their stuff online. You can go and go onto the Facebook pages, and you can go and check Jon's stuff out, which is the After Movie Diner. Check it out. It's absolutely fantastic. It's comedy, it's film reviews, and it's just really fun. So for those of you who have a love of cinema, it's a really nice podcast just to listen to. And I mean, hours of entertainment, really, really good. Some great observations. He has lots of guests on there. He's had William Sadler, and those of you who don't know who William Sadler is, shame on you. But if you don't, I'll tell you who quickly is. He's from Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. He was Death in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. In Die Hard 2, he was one of the main baddies in that. He was in the latest Iron Man film, the Iron Man 3 film, where he was the president. He's one of those people, if you saw him, you knew exactly who he is, and he's a very cool actor, and to have him on the show is absolutely amazing. And that's not just him. They've had loads of guests on there, and they're always worth checking out. So that's the After Movie Diner. You can find them on iTunes. Find them, rate them, check out that. Also, Crosstalk, that's just a comedic thing that Jon does where you can spend time just listening to some questions that have been sent in by listeners. If you want to send a question in, you can as well. It's a light entertainment show, and it's really, really good, and does interviews and music and that. And then one of my other personal favourites involving another friend of mine. It's good old Doc Action. It's Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid, and they do commentaries on action films, and that great observational stuff, really funny stuff. So if you're feeling a bit blue, if you're feeling a bit down, something that can take your mind off things and something really funny is check out some of the stuff that Jon Cross does. It's really good. Anyway, as I've been whittling on, I'm just going to play a quick track by Misilanious Plumbing Fixtures, and then we're going to go straight to part one of my interview with Jon Cross. So I hope you enjoy it, and please, by all means, if you want to comment or send an email in, or you want a guest on the show, please feel free to contact us at panicstationsuk@yahoo.co.uk. And here's some Misilanious Plumbing Fixtures. Enjoy.
Well, it is spring in the city, but I got winter in my veins. Just like the traffic, I'm changing lanes. I'm running away, I'm meeting it head on. Both are different outcomes, and both of them are wrong. I'm riding up a storm, I'm waiting in the wings. Life throws up too many things. When will it stop, and when will it start? Do you fix a situation by breaking it apart? Oh, and what if all else fails? Well, where do you go then? How many times must a heart start again? The future's looking shaky, but people are on your side. You have to forego any sense of pride. Well, everyone has opinions, you get lots of advice, and mostly it's just people there trying to be nice. Well, you found yourself a haven down by the tracks. You found woodland in the city, far away from all the hacks. You found food for just a $5. You found movies in the bin. Well, I'm sure there were worse ways for a story to begin. Yeah. Well, I'm sure there are worse ways. Oh, and all that you need now is just one moment of luck. And you want to be moving forward, but the accelerator's stuck. and every day you have to restart your belief and work just that little bit harder, waiting on some future relief. Ooh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, waiting on some relief. Ooh, yeah. Oh, I'm waiting on some relief. Got screaming in your ears, shouting in your head. You wish these bloody voices would take it down a peg. You struggle with motivation. The bed is nice and warm. You're losing all your stuffing and you're really on form. The nights round here won't stop it. You're slowly getting thin. But I'm sure there are worse ways for a story to begin. Sure there are worse ways. Oh, there are worse ways, baby, for my story to begin. My story just beginning. And there are worse ways for it to begin. Oh yeah. Oh baby, there are worse ways to begin.
Okay, everybody. Somebody who I've wanted to be on the show from day one. Somebody who, if it wasn't for their abilities and their knowledge, this podcast wouldn't even be here. It wouldn't be a reality. It'd just be some sort of mad idea popping around in my head. I really do owe him a lot. He's one of my best friends. He's been a friend of mine for many years. He runs a fantastic movie podcast called the After Movie Diner. He's also part of a show called Dr. Action and the Kick-Ass Kid. Check those out, they're fantastic. And also, as well, he's just currently started to do his new talk show called Cross Talk, which is really, really funny and really good. He's a brilliant man, really nice bloke. He's got a lot to say on the subject of depression because of being a sufferer himself. And I just want to say a big warm round of applause and a big thank you for being brave enough to come on the show to Mr. Jon Cross. Hello, John. How are you doing?
Well, thank you very much, Jonesy. That's well, wow, what an intro. That was a real pleasure. So thank you very much for that, and I'm very honoured.
No, thank you very much for being on here. I mean, I've wanted you to be on the show from day one. There's a couple of people I've always wanted on the show because I think they've got a lot to say, and I think also as well they've always been very eloquent with the way they've discussed their own personal feelings. You are, if I were to have a list of friends who could describe their genuine feelings when you can talk to them about something, somebody who can put to words any sort of emotional sense that they have in themselves and rational cognitive thought and arguments and things like that, you're one of the first names, if not the first name, that goes to the top of the list because of all the stuff that you do, your fantastic podcast, which I loved and still do love to this day, and on top of that as well, when we've discussed stuff in the past. And yeah, I mean, I remember when you first met me, we were at university, and I was going through some pretty nasty stuff at the time, and I was kind of in a rough place. and you were there for me, man, with a bunch of other people, and I've always appreciated that. So it's good to get you on the show to talk about things.
Well, thank you very much. I think you've built me up to the point where people are going to probably be disappointed now that I'm not more eloquent on the subject, but I'm gonna do my very best. The one thing I can say is that I like to talk, and that the more I've suffered and the more I've experienced mental health issues, the more I have been open. And I'm a very heart on my sleeve kind of guy anyway. Part of my brain chemistry or whatever is, unfortunately childish, I guess, in the way that every emotion I have, I kind of have to have that instant, and I have to express it that instant. I don't think that's so rare. It's just that it kind of gets condemned by some as being childish and incapable of repressing certain things. But I guess we're slightly of the generation that was told maybe we don't suppress things. There was a big push, I think, certainly in the end of the 80s, 90s, of this whole kind of self-help stuff, which, easy to be cynical about, but I think has helped a lot of people. And I think some of that certainly rubbed off on me, but my brain chemistry is such as I cannot really repress how I'm feeling or what I'm doing at any given time. And I am very, very lucky and very fortunate to have managed to surround myself miraculously with friends and a relatively understanding family that either tolerate it or know what to do with it or embrace it or accept it or whatever the word is. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come on today. But in terms of like being able to express it well, I think it just is that I'm not afraid to be open. I've never really lived in fear of many things, so I don't mind talking about it, and I don't mind expressing whatever it is. I don't think what I'm going to talk about is going to be rare or weird or unique or anything. I think it's going to be hopefully something that people listen to and think, yep, that's me. I have some of that. Yep. Okay. And hopefully it's going to make some people feel better. I certainly won't have any solutions, though. I'm sorry to say.
Well, yeah, I don't think many people have the solutions for everything, sadly. But I think you're right. I think you're definitely right. And I think the most important thing is, if anybody out there listening, any of our listeners, listen to what your personal issues have been and your own personal stories and your own battles with things. I think the one thing, if they can take anything from it and they can just realise they're not alone, that's what this is about. We can't claim to have all the solutions. We can give you a few things, ideas that may have helped with us. And like I've always said at the start of every show, we always say go see a GP, go and see a mental health practitioner, the people that are definitely in the know about how to do things. But by all means, you need a support group like what we're trying to do here, to talk and discuss things. And I think you raised something before, which I think already is an important thing. You don't mind talking about your own personal issues. You're very open about things. I'm very open about stuff. And again, I think you're quite right. We've come from a generation where obviously the self-help thing started coming out in the sort of late 80s, early 90s, and another thing that I've noticed as well, we're kind of repressing more. It's weird. The more we have a platform to say things, like on social media and stuff like this, the less we have to say. Almost, it's a bit of a weird one, and I know that a lot of people, because I'm very, very open and very forward about stuff. Obviously, about my own personal things. To the point where some people think, Jesus Christ, Chris, will you just shut the hell up about your own personal stuff and you keep it to yourself and everything else? But I think for the people that think that, and I totally understand why they think that, the reason why I do it so much is because otherwise I think I'd go mad. I honestly think
it's kind of helping. Mad. It's kind of cathartic.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I mean, the only problem I see with social media, and one of the reasons why I don't tend to take to social media and scream into the void so much. I understand why people do, and I respect it when they do it, and I'm kind of always a bit in awe when they do it. What I often do, though, is people will text me and go, "Oh, are you feeling all right?" Because they'll suddenly notice that I'll pick a pet peeve or either a political issue or something to do with film or something to do with music or something that I've read in the news or something like that. And I'll maybe talk about that, but in a more sort of negative or harsh way than I normally would. And then I get a barrage of emails and messages from people who know me very well saying, shit, dude, are you all right? I saw your status update and clearly you're going through something. Because they don't, people know me well enough now that they don't read my status updates and think, oh, he's just ranting about, the news or some political topic. They read it and go, uh-oh, John's, fallen down, into the valley again. But, the way some people, yourself included, use Facebook as a diary or as an expression or as a catharsis or whatever, I completely and utterly respect and would never knock anyone for doing that. I find people who would knock people for doing that to be some of the weirdest and worst people on the planet, because I'm really sort of, this is something I suffer, and I want to bring this up very quickly, and unfortunately this kind of topic is going to lead me to go all over the place, but this is something that I've found very odd, and I want to bring it up. Throughout my life, and I try not to do it so much anymore, but it wells up in my brain, certainly. But throughout my life, my mania or my manic side of my depression has often expressed itself in fits of rage or fits of confusion or fits of anger. And it's not been violent necessarily towards others. I have, banged my head against things and punched things and so on, and broken things and destroyed things that I loved or objects or things in the fit of rage. But I've not ever, I don't go after other people necessarily, although people do accuse me of using violent imagery in my words sometimes. However, they do. I had someone the other day, I was talking about some debate thing, and I was using one of my kind of Blackadder-ish kind of, well, I hope they all drown or something like that, like some sort of thing that Brits kind of say quite a lot.
It's you're using your humor to...
No. Yeah, definitely. It's like you. It's a humorous catharsis. It's a way of like shedding the demons of rage or shedding the monkey off your back of rage or anger. And it's a more humorous, more creative way of doing it. Even if to some uninitiated it might come across as violent. The thing that was always screaming in my head when I was going through a panic attack or I was going through a manic episode was, help me, help me, help me. Why can't you see how absolutely devastatingly upset I am? Why are you all backing away from me? Why are you condemning me? Why, it was always this case that here I was literally, Kevin Smith uses the example of when he writes or when he wrote his first few films, it was like he was taking big fatty chunks of his heart and slamming them down onto film. And when I used to have a rage or when I used to get very upset or when I get angry, I am reaching inside myself and I'm flinging chunks of my heart and my psychology at people. And because I've never been on the other side of that and not understood it, because I go through it myself, so I've always tried to understand it in others. But because I've never been on the other side of myself being like that, I could never, ever feel empathy or appreciate the people who are stood in the room going, Jesus Christ, what's wrong with John? Or fuck John, what the fuck's he going all crazy about? Fuck, and whatever. Variety of reactions. And I'm sure that anyone listening who has had manic episodes knows that inside you're screaming, help me, help me. And you know that the reaction from the outside world can very often be, well, what's his problem? Or he needs to calm down, or someone's had too much coffee today, or whatever they say. And that's like the nice end. Some ends, they can be really obnoxious and abusive. And I've had people when I've been manic and even in my mania have actually looked into their eyes with absolute rage and tears and a red face and a shaky body. And I've been down on the floor looking up going, please help me. I'm just crying for help. I've actually had people look at me in the eye and say, stop being such an attention-seeking fuck, and walk out the door and slam the door. And I've actually had that. And that is possibly one of the most upsetting things I can possibly imagine. So if you have someone in your life who suffers it, or if you yourself suffer it, realize two things. First of all, the person having a manic episode is not angry at you, it's not upset at you, it's not trying to make your life bad, it's not trying to destroy you. They are in desperate need of love and help and someone to listen. That's the first thing. And the other thing is, if you're having a manic episode and you're the person experiencing the mania, be aware that nobody else in the room necessarily understands what's going on. And when I've been in a manic episode, which, touch wood, doesn't happen as frequently anymore, and I'll get onto this later, that I've worked very hard since my mid-teens to psychologically and mentally control myself as much as possible, and it's a daily struggle. But what was I said?
You were just talking about the fact that when you're having manic episodes, people, what they should do. If you're the person.
Sorry. Yes. I'm sorry. I got taken away by it. But yes, when you're in a manic episode, I've always been relatively lucky that there are moments within the mania where I am able to be aware of my surroundings. That's how I've never hurt anyone else. But I've always tried to be aware of my surroundings. And in those briefest moments in the rage that you're aware of your surroundings, try and use that moment to try and explain in simple terms what's going on inside you if you can. It's a very complicated thing to do. And even when you try, like I said, even when I tried and I begged the person and I said, I'm just really asking for help, please just love me, all I want is to be taken care of. Even then they didn't understand, or they thought that tough love was somehow the way to deal with it. Like fuck him and walk away was a way to deal with it. And it's absolutely 150% not the way to deal with it. It's one of the worst ways to deal with it. So I wanted to bring that up as it led from a tangent that we started before, and I think it's a very relevant point.
It's a very relevant point. I actually agree with you. I've had people turn around and do very, to me, I think anybody who gets to the point where they're walking out and somebody's on their knees and they're in a serious issues and they're having serious moments, I think anybody who walks away from those kind of things, for me personally, yes, I know it's hard for watching somebody go through things that you don't understand, but empathy is key. And I think if you can't be empathic, if you can't be there for that person because you have such a lack of understanding, or you're fearful, because it is scary seeing these kind of things. I'm not saying it isn't. I think the main thing you can get, the most thing you can do is literally go, if you cannot say anything nice, don't say anything at all. And don't walk out, for God's sake, don't walk out and do what they did to you. Because to me, that's that's like one of the worst things you could ever do to somebody. And I think if you're doing that, I think it speaks volumes of the kind of personality that you have if you're saying that kind of stuff to somebody. Not you, John, but obviously if you're the person who's going, oh, well, you're an attention-seeking fuck and all that kind of stuff. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, and that's happened to me. But before I mention the thing where that's happened to me, just to make sure the listeners are aware, John's been talking about the fact that he suffered. I'm right in saying this. You suffer from bipolar, otherwise known as manic depression.
Yes, I mean I was unfortunately those kind of terms when I was first experiencing symptoms of it as an early teen, although really you could trace it back to a very erratic and precocious childhood. But when it was slightly more aware in early high school, around 13, or secondary school rather, I was sent to therapists, and they attempted to put me on, and I don't know the name of it, I'm afraid. They attempted to put me on some pills at that time. However, it's never officially been diagnosed. It's something that I do wish one day to actually do. I was incredibly inspired by, as I'm sure other people have said, but the Stephen Fry documentary, Secret Life of a Manic Depressive. And I definitely want to do something like that where I go and get tested for certain. because while I don't think I'm as bad as even Stephen Fry, and he's on the lower end, I certainly suffer from almost every symptom he spoke about. And my brain chemistry, just by witnessing the world and just by experiencing the world and having lived on 2 continents and everything else, my brain chemistry is not normal. And the closest it comes to explanation is bipolar or manic depression. Yeah.
Yeah, like Danny, who was my guest on the previous episode, and he's going to be guesting. We're going to be doing another podcast tomorrow, which I'll probably use as next week's podcast as an extension of this, talking about his own bipolar and things. We were planning on doing a bipolar discussion because he has been clinically diagnosed with it.
Right.
We were planning on doing a conversation about this in a couple of weeks' time, but obviously, as the day of recording this, I think it's very, very poignant, I suppose, that we're talking. I think in a sort of dark irony as well that that I'm discussing with a good friend of mine, somebody whose life and creative endeavours are so steeped in film. You know, I would comically refer to your own blood. If you were to cut yourself, you probably bleed celluloid. You know, it's kind of like that kind of person. You know, you love film so much, so passionate about it, and it's inspiring to see the creative passions that you have, not just film but with music and stuff. And I think this, as I say, there's a dark irony that today, as we record this, and unfortunately for any of the listeners, by the time you get this, obviously this has obviously been and gone, but on the day where this has occurred, this is the date where unfortunately Robin Williams has, by all intents and purposes, taken his own life. His publicist, they haven't done an official verdict. They're only insinuating and they're saying.
Oh no,
things.
actually, the sheriff has released, because I'm in America, so therefore we got the news. The sheriff has released that he did hang himself with a belt.
Oh right. Okay.
And there was an attempt. It looked like from a penknife on his wrists, because there was a bloody penknife and there was lacerations on his wrist. But the only thing that they won't get back just yet is the toxicology report, because back in 2006, he did slip off the wagon with his addiction and started
back
to...
with alcohol, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was back with alcohol again, and he was just entering into a 12-step program, I think, last year. So they're going to do a toxicology report to see if anything else comes up. But it does look like that he tried in several desperate ways to sadly end his life, and it's an absolute tragedy.
Yeah, exactly, an absolute tragedy, and I think that's something we'll discuss in a bit regarding people in a media sort of spotlight, specifically film. I think like actors and directors and things like that. I think
I think only
to that.
I think only because a lot of people have spoken about, but he seems so happy and he seems so prolific and so on. I know from my own journey or my own life or whatever that being creative or steeping myself in creative stuff like watching film or listening to music or having discussions or doing the podcast, it's a way to keep so much at bay. It really is a way to keep so much at bay. Not consciously, you're not sat there going, I've got to create or I'm going to, go mental or crazy or something. But it is a subconscious thing. And when you step back and realize that over the last year, I've produced what I've produced, or you produced what you produced, or any of our creative friends have done so. When you step back, you go, oh, okay, now I can kind of see the pattern, and I can see where I was most active and where I wasn't. Now there are periods like, I'm sad to say the last couple of weeks for me, where I am low. I'm in a very low period. I'm in a not wanting to get up, unmotivated, low period at the moment. And for example, the episode of my show that I just put up today was sat there on my computer for almost 2 weeks. And anyone who's not heard the show, I do a bit of comedy at the beginning, I do a movie discussion in the middle, and then there's a song to end it. And I had done the song and I had edited the movie discussion, and it was just sat there staring at me for 2 weeks. And I could not get motivated to write the comedy at the beginning. And normally I can sit there and I can, bash something out, or I can do something silly or come up with some silly names or something, just anything to kind of get into the show. But really, and, we'll get into again what I'm going through at the moment in terms of where my life is. But, staring at me and me staring back at it and just walking away from the computer and getting back into bed and then coming back to it and staring at it and coming back to bed, which is what I've kind of been doing for the last 2 weeks. Until I just ended up putting it out. I didn't put any comedy or anything. I used the Robin Williams thing to talk about that. I mentioned a little bit about some of the stuff we would talk on this show. I mentioned this show, and then I went into the episode. Because my feeling was, well, okay, I can't do anything creative, but what I can do is something honest. And I want to get the show out there because I know that there are 2 more shows that I've got to get out there in the next 2 weeks and so on. So sometimes the creative stuff can kick your ass when you're like me in a low, unmotivated period. But most of the time, I find it very, very therapeutic.
Yeah, I mean, your show has so much going, like all the comedy aspects of it, and I mean, it's fantastic for just the sheer entertainment and the value for money, for the fact that it's free, for God's sake. And the fact that it's like a couple of hours normally, and everything. And there's so much energy that you put into that. I think you're right. You do need a creative outlet when you have moments of lowness, and when you have a lot of things building up. This year, I specifically had a bunch of stuff, and luckily, because of my own previous experiences, I could see the warning signs, the blinkers, and I was like, right, I need to go see a doctor. Yeah. And I need to and I got signed off with stress. He signed me off for 4 weeks because my blood pressure got dangerously high, and I was very, very stressed. There was a number of things which obviously I won't be going into in my professional and personal life that were just, there was too much. And I've been going on and on and on. I mean, just to jump onto part of the... but to part of the personal stuff, not the professional stuff. I won't do that because obviously that's totally different. It's my work life, but my personal side of stuff. I had a moment where I had a cancer scare, which thankfully was sort of all washed into the water, and that was okay. And I kind of kept that on low key because I was like, well, it could be absolutely nothing, so I'm not going to start panicking just yet. I'd written off my car at Christmas, so Christmas was pretty much ruined. I hadn't had a holiday for 9 months. I'd had a big argument with people that I love, which really annoyed me because it was over something really, really silly. And if I'm honest, it was my reactions because of the stress towards the situation that made things worse, which was a horrible thing that happened. And then on top of that, which thankfully that's been rectified now, and then on top of that as well, I had a family death. Been sorting all that kind of stuff. It's just like one thing after another, and when it really rains down on you, that's, I think, when you can only hold it back for so long, and it's kind of, sometimes things come in like a perfect storm, like lightning in a bottle. And I think that what was going on in my life right at that point was there was an awful lot of stuff going on at the same time. I started getting death threats as well off somebody I used to know who suffers from substance abuse now, and just really, really weird things, one thing after another. And I remember talking to you off air, as it were, about everything, and you were like, Jesus, and it's a hell of a lot. And I mean, when things go on in your life that's so problematic, and there's so much at one moment in time, you can deal with one or two, but when it's one thing after another, you need to have a break and need to kind of stop and go, right, hang on, wait, just wait a second. And I think it's very easy for people to kind of dismiss stuff and go, oh, man up, or I hate that phrase.
Yeah, me
man
too.
up. I hate it. Just man up. Why? Whatever. Really bugs me.
Man up basically means I don't want to deal with your shit. I
Yeah,
don't want to be bothered by you, so can you shut up, please? That's what it means.
yeah, that's
It
exactly
doesn't
it.
mean it doesn't mean man up in terms of like be a strong man, because talking like this makes you strong. I used to have this thing. I don't know where it came from but as a teenager, I used to think about it, and I guess from going around the country or whatever with my mum and seeing various things, castles and big buildings and stuff that armies used to live in, or whatever. And I used to think, well, who's actually stronger? The guy who can walk out completely naked into the field of battle and stand down the armies, or the armies who are hidden in the castle, or hidden behind shields, or the people who hide behind padding, or whatever it is. And it's a very simple metaphor, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense, but it used to give me a lot of comfort in terms of I've always found real strength to have absolutely nothing to do with muscles, nothing to do with guns, nothing to do with shields, nothing to do with buildings. And it's something that is going round and round in my head at the moment, because if we can get on to sort of where I am, just to make this a segue, because it does
Yep.
fit in.
Yep, perfect.
Um, Basically, without going into too many details, the last year has seen me lose my successful job in New York City. It's seen me struggle to find another job I still haven't done in 12 months, proper job. It's seen me lose my marriage, and watch that fall apart and not be able to save it. Um, Through, again, no major fault of either of ours, just through just being different people, sadly. And then it's seen me, obviously, off the back of that, lose my home, have to find a place with friends, and then eventually have to move into a place as a shared place miles away from where I used to live, and just trying to sort of hold on. And it's been a really tough 2013, 2014, as people might imagine by that string of events. But the breakup started to get me thinking, and I don't know whether your brain chemistry does this, but I find mine does this with sociology. In other words, like looking around and observing, or trying to be intuitive about the people, or the society around us. And my brain constantly rattles on about that all the time. Can't switch it off. And the other thing is, it's not hypochondria, because sometimes things are wrong with you, but I constantly have health scares within my body. Weirdly enough, I've never been a guy who goes to the doctor. I've never been someone who rushes the hospital. I've never been that, but I do constantly. Like, I got a mosquito bite on my foot, and I immediately think, well, what if it's something else, or what if it's bed bugs and I've got to deal with that, or what if it's what if it's some illness that's eating away at my feet, or what if it's like, I immediately go off onto like a million different things, and I have to just go, no, John, it's just a mosquito bite, just a mosquito bite. But my brain can run off on tangents all the time, and that's why I said earlier that it's a constant job daily to control the internal monologue. Even if it's not a rage-filled monologue, it's still work to control it, and to just make it be quiet long enough that I can kind of interact with other people. And the thing that I'd noticed when I was kind of trying to analyze the breakup, and trying to go through the last 7.5 years of being married, and figuring out who I'd been with, and looking at my wife and looking at me, and sort of thinking about lots of things. I then started to do that with the society around me, and it's only really had negative results, sadly, as I've started to see, to go back to the strength thing. I've started to be able to, and I don't know if you get this, but, and I don't know whether this is weird or arrogant or what it is, but I'm just going to say it. I feel internally that when I look at people, or I look at the world and whatever, and it's not just making judgments, I don't want people to think that, but that I look at the world, that I can be quite intuitive and perceptive about it, in a way that feels true, like X-ray vision almost. And And I don't use it very often. I don't whip it out very often. And I try not to, because whenever I say that to people, they're like, oh, really? Do me, analyze me. What do you see in me? And I'm like, always like, no, 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 I'm not going to do that. I'm not passing judgment on people. And I'm, in fact, when it comes to my dealings with people, I try and be as non-judgmental as possible. If people, use substances I don't use, or if people have a lifestyle I wouldn't necessarily have, whatever, doesn't bother me. I try and, as where I can, to understand it. But lately, I've really been looking around, and I've really felt very alone, because I feel that, I have that old thing of feeling like, well, everyone else got the manual and I didn't get the manual. I feel like that very much, that everyone else has the fucking key to the door and they've all left me outside and everyone's inside laughing. But the other thing I feel is this sudden realization, well, not sudden, I guess, but gradual realization that most people have some form of defensive mask. And while they can very often, while that might sound like an obvious statement, and while very often people will even admit it and go, oh yeah, no, I go to work and I have to be this person because, these are the stresses or the realities of my job, so therefore I have to like tune into this bit, and all the other bits get left behind, and I become this person, I put on this mask, and other people will admit it. There are some people who live, and this is what has frightened me, and it came out of my job and it came out of various other things that I've witnessed over the last year, is that there are some people who just honestly and truly believe the defenses or the world or the society that they themselves have created for themselves in their head. And anyone who so much as questions, challenges, is different, anything like that, they are completely shut out and destroyed. I'm talking specifically, if you want an example, is my boss from my last job, the one who let me go, was completely, as a human, and I'm talking about the very human part of ourselves, the emotional part of ourselves, throughout the time that I knew her, was completely immovable. Even in a chat, I'm not even talking about a meeting or a discussion or an official work thing. I mean, separately, socially, quietly, was immovable on some completely illogical and irrational and, idiotic points that she had built up, believed, fabricated, and made part of her defense. And was completely immovable on any discussion of anything, even to the most minute detail, to the point where you couldn't see the human living behind her eyes. And it was utterly fearful. I was utterly fearful of it for the first time, of being fearful in anything. I was utterly afraid of it, because I was suddenly like, I had lived under the illusion, I think, for most of my life, that people were in on the joke, that people were in on the joke of humanity. That people realized that jobs and school and religion and various other kind of institutions that we have throughout our lives, or that we've created in our society, are simply that. They're just places we go to do stuff. They're not the be all and end all. They don't have to be set up the way that they're set up. They're not the monumentally important things we seem to make them out to be. They really are just places we go and exist. They're not, and yet, when you look at politics and when you look at work and when you look at these places, the sudden realization that, no, these people actually believe this stuff. They believe it to their core. And there's another great Kevin Smith quote that says about beliefs are difficult, ideas are better. You can change an idea, you can't change a belief. And I have been faced in this last year with detriment happening to my life because of essentially fundamentalists. And I don't mean that fundamentalist Christians or fundamentalist conservatives or anything like that. I mean fundamentalists in that their life view is their life view, and damn anybody else is all to hell. And not in some sort of, well, I'm just doing some self-preservation or I'm aware of this, but in some genuinely almost psychopathic belief structure that they've formed in their head that is completely immovable. And that I don't get afraid, and I'm not fearful, and I try not to live in fear, but that more than anything scares me. And dealing with that and looking around society and dealing with that and seeing that, or seeing that I perceive it that way, and again, that might be my brain chemistry perceiving it that way, has made me feel very, very, very lonely, because I feel like if I ever do get back on the horse and want to date again, or if I do get another job again, or if I do, get a new home, or if I do have to go out there and deal with certain institutions, that I'm going to constantly fail at them, because I don't see life that way, and I don't fit into life that way, and I don't fit into society that way. Because it's not how my brain and my body will allow me to be. That might have all sounded completely weird and strange and odd, but it needed to kind of come out, because that's what I've been dealing with.
No, actually, I actually happen to agree with you. I often find myself, just like you, looking at stuff and going, am I the only one who doesn't get it? I mean, please tell me if I'm wrong, but I'm like, am I the only one who isn't in on it? Like you say, in on the joke. And I'm like going, well, hang on a second here. I thought we were friends, or friends are supposed to do this, or whatever, or I thought, you were a colleague, or whatever the sort of element or thing where things have gone south. It's really bad, because you look at other people and they're so unrigid and unwavering, and they lack an emotional flexibility of belief. I think is the best way of looking at it, is they are so emotionally rigid with what they believe in, that they're going to be so immovable that they won't take anybody else's opinion on board. And I've started to look at that, because I've always kind of had that in my head going, what? Like I've had a discussion with somebody and they're like, no, that's not the case. And I'm like, well, no, because of this, this and this. And equally, I mean, I do that, but I do it with silly things, which is the really stupid thing. Like, for example, I'll do it with films. Certain films, somebody turns around to me and goes, "Oh, I like the new RoboCop film." I'm like, you're a fucking moron. the original RoboCop, don't even get me started with it, and all that kind of stuff. But that's silly stuff.
But also, we're aware. This is the other thing, is I know what you mean, but we're aware that is a joke, and while we might go, no, my personal choice is I will never watch the RoboCop remake, because fuck the RoboCop remake, because it's RoboCop and RoboCop is amazing. Mm-hmm. And while we might express that in a, well, fuck you, you're an idiot, as a joke type way, we are completely aware of the thought processes and the emotion and the humanity that went into all those different things. Yeah. That's not the same as someone who honestly believes, as my last boss did, honestly believes that me being into work 7 minutes late because of a train issue and because of emotional things that I was clearly going through, because I 3 or 4 months later lost my wife and various other things, various other reasons, because of 7 minutes, that was worth destroying my entire life and getting rid of me and firing me. And then not only that, but then because in America your job pays for your unemployment, or pays into your unemployment, so that then when you're unemployed you can claim on unemployment, they then took me to court to stop me being able to claim unemployment.
What?
So they took it to that length of time in order to completely cobble me, completely ruin me. And they did it even though I had made over $5 million for that company just in the few years that I'd been there. So what I mean by all that, and that this is going way deep into one particular situation, but what I mean by all that is you are led to believe that society is set up in a way where, well, if I make money and I'm successful and blah, 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 you can go up through the corporations and so on and so forth. but when you suddenly realize that actually it's not about that, and you are completely irrelevant, and the money you make didn't mean anything, and suddenly all that fabric of society that you buy into, that you say, okay, I've signed on the dotted line and here I go, when that all suddenly crumbles, you suddenly think, well, hang on a second, if there isn't these rules that you already laid down, and no one's going to tell me what the rules are now, then now what? You know what I mean?
Mm.
And it's really made me kind of regress into myself and made me think that I don't know, what I'm going through right now. I honestly don't know that I can survive it, because it's all very well to say, well, get up and go and get up and go and get up and go, but if you see nowhere that you fit in, if you see nowhere that you can just belong, because all I want to do is go to a job every day, 9 to 5, whatever it is, smile, say very little, and come home again, and then live the life I want to live outside. I'm not asking for the world, and I don't understand power, and I don't understand competition. I've never been able to understand either of those things, so I have no desire for either of those things. Um, but when you can't even do that, you're suddenly, and when you see the world around you, I went out the other night and we were in a bar with a friend of mine, and suddenly, I've been married for 7.5 years, so I hadn't been out to these kind of places before. But suddenly you realize everybody, everybody has a cell phone, and everyone is taking multiple pictures of themselves in dark bars with massive flashes and blinding everyone around them and being incredibly narcissistic and all this sort of stuff. And I was sat around and I was watching all this, and I was like, I'm never gonna I'm never going to find a job, and I'm never going to find someone to date. And this is how my depression is manifesting itself right now. That's why I'm talking about this. I'm not talking about this because I'm condemning society. Let society do whatever it wants. But I'm saying that my depression, my brain chemistry, the way I feel about things, the way I look about things, is making it impossible for me to see a future. It's making me impossible for me to see where I fit, how I belong, how I can relax long enough to even attempt to belong. It's feels like everything is closing in on me. It feels like everything is reducing me to a tiny little box, and I cannot escape. And it's making me, everything I see around me, I'm suddenly thinking, well, I don't do that, and I can't do that, and I don't understand why they're doing that, and I don't, and none of it is making sense all of a sudden. And for the longest time, I thought it all made sense. I was like, well, you do this, you go to work, and you do this, and you say this, and this happens, and this is the result of that, and so on and so forth. And we're all in on the game, right? We're all in on the game. This is what the game is. We all go to work and we all put on a tie, but we all know it's bullshit, but we go do it anyway, right? But then some people don't know it's bullshit. And then suddenly, because I know it's bullshit, that's a problem. And then it all falls apart. I don't really know what I'm saying, dude, and I've gone off on one.
No. Actually, I think what you're saying is very poignant. It is, isn't it? It is very poignant. Haha. However, this is it was such a long interview, it's had to be cut into pieces. Now, for those of you wanting to wait for the rest of the story, because there's so much more, we're going to have to wait till next week, I'm afraid, because we're hitting the hour mark, and I'm trying to make sure that we're getting the episodes around about an hour, because they're quite large at the moment as they are, and trying to make it bite-sized chunks are a bit more easier. So I think around about an hour, between an hour and 15 minutes is about right size for a podcast. Especially one involving this kind of sort of subject matter. Now, John will return. Now, whether or not it's next week or the week after, okay, he's either going to be on episode 8. Well, no, this is episode 8, I believe. It'll be either episode 9 or episode 10, depending on whether or not I get this interview sorted regarding the post-traumatic stress disorders. So until next time, I'm going to have to leave you to it. Bear with me. We'll be back next week. I promise. We've got so much that it'll be nice and regular, so it's all good. If you have any questions, or you want to basically write in about what you've heard so far, or any of that kind of stuff, please feel free to give us a shout at panicstationsuk@yahoo.co.uk. Until then, Wishing you all the very, very best. Be safe, carry on being strong. Remember, you are not alone. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye-bye.
Wake up, dry your eyes. Time to face the long night with a brave smile. Dive headfirst into the dark with your shaking hands clenched in a soldier's heart. I know where you've been. I know where you've been. You're not alone in this swirling world. You have my hand. You have my hand. Wake up, dry your eyes. Time to face a long night with a brave smile. Dive headfirst into the dark with your shaking hands clenched in a soldier's heart. I know where you've been. I know